Welcome to Music City Memoirs. I'm your host, Dave Bechtel. Thanks for joining me as we explore the lives of the great people of Nashville, Tennessee that helped give this amazing city the nickname Music City, USA. This is our first full episode. Hopefully you've been able to watch or listen to the introduction episode that explains a little bit about the inspiration for this series. Since this is our first episode, I thought it would be fitting to have a longtime collaborator and musical friend who partially inspired this podcast be our first guest. Let me introduce you all to Jerry McPherson. I think that it's not totally fair to say, Jerry, that you are a guitar player, because that I think minimizes who you are and what you do, but I think most people know you for your guitar work. So here's a few of the artists that you probably have heard of that Jerry has played with and for and created really great art with.
And if you say that I played on something that I didn't, I'm not going to correct you.
Okay. All right. Elvis Presley.
Okay. He was great. Man, what's he doing now?
Here's just a very, very small list. Faith Hill, Tim McGraw, Amy Grant, Toby Keith, Don Henley, Chris Isaak, Kelly Clarkson, Little Big Town, Lady Antebellum, the Doobie Brothers, Lionel Richie, Dolly Parton, Carrie Underwood, Rascal Flatts, Kenny Rogers, Kenny Loggins, Cheap Trick, Michael Bolton, Engelbert Humperdinck, Barry Manilow, for all you Fanilows out there, Jewel, Burt Bacharach.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe, I didn't see this, but I heard someone else say that you played with or for the Insane Clown Posse.
Yep, that's an interesting credit right there. Yeah, and very much apart from Barry Manilow. They have really nothing. Their music's both in stereo, but that's about the only connector.
That's great. So you're not originally from Nashville.
No. And you left off Chris Cornell.
Chris Cornell,
yeah.
That's right.
And Chris Martin at Coldplay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I specialize in Chris's.
That's great. You actually played with one of my favorite guys. Probably not a whole lot of people would know about this guy. This guy by the name of Billy Crockett, who's also a Texan. He is one of my absolute favorites.
Fabulous acoustic player.
Well, and that was the thing that as I'm scrolling through the list preparing for this, and I saw Billy Crockett, I'm like, absolutely no disrespect to you at all, but why? I mean, Billy is
he's a great guitar player.
Extraordinary guitar player, and I was like, well, that's really fascinating.
Yeah. We all tend to outsource every once in a while.
Yeah, and that's so cool. So not from Nashville originally. Have you actually met anyone that's from Nashville, like a Nashville native?
Yeah,
person?
Gordon Kennedy.
Gordon Kennedy.
Yeah,
okay.
Good friend of mine. We're in a band together right now. There's some. Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah.
It's odd. But yeah, there's still people around, and I'm not sure how they're faring with the new Nashville. Everybody moving in.
Lots of traffic now, for sure. But you're originally from Texas.
From Dallas, yeah.
Okay, now are you from Fort Worth or are you from Dallas?
From Dallas, and my line is that had I grown up, it would have been in Texas, but I squandered the opportunity. But yeah, I grew up in Dallas. And over by Mesquite, over by the Mesquite Rodeo, not too far from there. And just grew up, my mom playing piano and organ at the church and at the hockey games.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So hockey games.
Yeah.
Hockey games in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, have you ever heard the bum, 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 bum,
yeah.
That's my mom. She didn't write it, but yeah.
So since you are known as a guitarist, let's talk just a little bit about how you got to be acquainted with the instrument that you're associated with.
Well, and there's a lot of things that would have pointed me away from guitar. One, my mom being a keyboardist. Mm-hmm. We always had a piano in the house. She was always playing. She would play us to sleep at night. And when I was in junior high, we had a Hammond B3 in the living room, with the Leslie right there.
Wow.
So she could practice for church and for hockey games and stuff.
Those get pretty loud too.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I really wanted to play keyboards, and I never connected with it. Still to this day, it's kind of like, brr, brr, and I'm good at math. You'd think that I would be able to play keys. But it never really connected with me, but I always loved the sound of keyboards. And my older brother Rick, got an acoustic guitar for Christmas. Okay. This is when we were really young, and with an instruction book, and he never really connected with that. He would mess around with keyboard, on the piano. So I ended up grabbing his guitar and learning some chords, and yeah, I instantly connected with that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you still have that guitar or know where it's at?
No, and it was a terrible guitar.
Yeah.
It was some kind of Sears.
Sure.
It was made in Japan, but it was called a Victoria or something like that. It was a terrible guitar.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You are known as a guitar player, but like in your own words, what does that mean? Like if you're meeting someone when you're on vacation, they say, "Hey, what do you do?"
Yeah. I'll tell them I'm a session guitarist, and I go out on the road every once in a while, and the last time I was out was last fall with Tim and Faith, doing some shows with them. But yeah, it's a pretty wide net when I think about, playing guitar for people, because there's some live, there's some touring, there's some local live, they're, mainly sessions though. And that's a wide genre right there, as you can see, Insane Clown Posse and Barry Manilow, and all points in between. And you never know what you're going to get called for when you show up. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you wish you would have known, you would have brought the right gear, but you just kind of make do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty fair game though. They can ask you for just about anything.
Mm-hmm. Were you in bands growing up? Yeah,
and I grew up in the church, with my mom playing piano and organ at the church. And so the bands, I was in a band with some, school buddies, and as soon as we got good enough to play clubs, my parents made me quit the band because they wouldn't let me play clubs. Yeah. Sure. So, but oddly enough, I'm the only one that's still playing, and the rest of the guys didn't pursue it. I'm not really sure why. Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of a drag to see other people go on, to get to do stuff, and I didn't. But it was a good path.
Do you remember your first paid gig?
Yeah. A friend of mine at church, Kirk and his wife Debbie Dearman, great people. I think they live here now in Nashville. This was back in Dallas. He had heard me play there at church, and he recommended me for a session. And it was at Summit Burnett down in Dallas, and I was 15, so I didn't have a driver's license. So my sister Pam had to drive me to the session.
Wow.
And I was so nervous. I got there and I didn't have any picks.
Oh boy.
So I remember taking a 9-volt battery, the little plastic that comes around it, and folding it up and using that as a pick, and it was pretty horrible experience. But the great experience was that I got a fat check. Yeah. And I was like, this is way better than mowing lawns. Yeah. So I decided to go that path instead of mowing lawns.
What did you do with the fat check?
I don't even remember now. I just remember that satisfaction of going in, playing. If you make a mistake, you can redo it, and.
So your first paid gig was not a live thing. It was a recording.
It was a recording session, yeah, at 15, yeah.
Interesting.
Many years ago.
That's sort of was my experience as well. But I was, single digits little guy, and I got called to go and sing on a local grocery store commercial. And they used my little voice along with a couple other little kids, purposefully singing out of tune. And the first pass that we did, it was all nice and tight, because we had rehearsed it, whatever. And the producer came in and said, no, you're supposed to sound like kids, And so we were then trying to make it sound like we didn't know how to sing, so that we sounded like kids having fun. But I remember I was so fascinated with that. I mean, we were there for 10, 15 minutes. Right. And I think I got a check for $50 or something like that. And as a 7, 8-year-old kid, this is the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. Sign me up.
So So you've spent most of your adult life doing session work. Yeah. But I know that you did quite a bit in the music and audio world before being kind of primarily a guitar player. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the work you did previously as before a session player?
Probably the first thing I produced was a Christian artist, Morgan Cryer.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And he was very capable. I don't know why he had me there. Because his demos, I remember listening to him going, "Oh boy, I hope we can match this."
Yeah.
And I had Doug Pinnick from King's X. They're from Houston.
Sure.
I had him do some background vocals on it. He sang great. So that was a fun experience, and it was there at Rivendell, where I was very comfortable with all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know some of the albums that you produced, and I think they're fantastic. But so I'm curious, what made you move from role as primarily a producer, someone that helps put together projects, to someone that is primarily just there for maybe a few hours or a few days to contribute a part?
It may be lack of attention span, because when you're producing, that's why you produce. You work with the same songs for weeks and weeks or months, And after a while, it's kind of like, it's like if you're remodeling a house, your brain clicks into a thing at one point where you go, I'm going to be remodeling this house for the rest of my life. And you get the clicks in your producer head where it's like, we're going to be recording this one record for the rest of our lives. Yeah. And as a session player, every day is a different day, with a different group of people, a different studio. And that's what I like, as far as here in Nashville, being in a music town where you're working with different people every day.
Is that one of the things that led you to move to Nashville, is the ability to collaborate with more and different people? Yeah,
well, I was living in Houston at the time, and when I went to school at Baylor University there in Waco, Word Records was there in Waco. That's where they started. And they moved to Nashville. So a lot of my friends, I had a lot of friends that would work as interns at Word Records. And then when Word moved to Nashville, they all ended up moving to Nashville. So, and becoming executives, and vice presidents and stuff at Word. So I knew more people. I had more contacts in the music industry in Nashville than I did in Texas. Wow. So it was a pretty natural move. And I was touring with Amy Grant at that time. So
how old would you have been at that point?
16. I don't have my calculator. So that was in the mid '80s.
Okay.
So I was in my young 20s.
Wow.
And but it was great moving to Nashville with a gig.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
Very fortunate.
Man, that's one of the difficult things, seeing so many young people come into town, and they don't have a full understanding of maybe how the industry works, and they might be super hardworking and super talented, but just because you have both of those things and you move to town doesn't mean that you're going to get a job, and that's sometimes frustrating and disappointing to see people that have the ability, but just not the opportunity.
Yeah, it was a good time for me to move to Nashville. There was a lot of music being made.
Yeah,
bunch of music being made.
So you probably don't have like the quintessential first session in Nashville story that some other guys do.
I eased into it pretty well. The first big record that I played on was an Amy Grant record, Lead Me On.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and this is, the whole process started before I officially moved here. I was touring with Amy, and ended up moving into their farmhouse. They had a farmhouse there in Franklin, and I lived there for a few months, and they had a studio in the basement, and I would go down there and just write and put together tracks, and then Amy and Wayne Kirkpatrick would write lyrics to it. So I ended up getting 3 co-writes on the Lead Me On record because of that, just from living there. So pretty sweet deal.
Yeah.
To live for free and get cuts from it.
And Brown produced that one?
Yeah, and Brown produced that, but
Brown Bannister.
Yeah, Brown Bannister, he's the Quincy Jones of Christian music, and but he looks like Eric Clapton. There was all these guys that they flew in from L.A. Dan Huff, Robbie Buchanan, great keyboardist, and I just remember that their cartage bill just from L.A. to Nashville was $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
for their gear. And now people are cutting records for 10 grand. You know,
Yeah.
that was just to get their gear to Nashville. You know?
So you're young 20s, and you know how highly I think of you as a guitar player. So this is no slight at all. But were you nervous at all when you see Dan Huff
and
show up?
I mean, I'd met Dan before that.
Okay.
I'd even stayed at his place a couple or went around with him to sessions in LA when he was still there.
Okay, cool. Wow.
Cool. Yeah, it was great.
Mind blown, probably.
Yeah, he was great. And you know, but the thing about playing with Amy live is I had to learn all these guitar parts that he played.
Okay.
But what was great about it is that, you know, he would play it one time, and then I would have to learn it, and then I would have to play it hundreds of times.
Sure.
And so I ended up with this vocabulary of things to do over certain songs, certain chord changes, certain feels and everything. And then I incorporated, you know, what I wanted to hear. So I ended up with this pretty large vocabulary of what to do when somebody plops a chart in front of you with these kind of chords or this kind of feel. And, you know, sound-wise, it's like, oh yeah, I'll do kind of what Dan did, but I'll add this to what he did. And
Yeah.
it
Wow.
really paid off big time.
Wow.
That was good training.
This is kind of one of my perspectives of the recording industry, is that we're not necessarily in the art creation business, but we're
Right.
in the service
Right,
industry.
service.
Does that resonate
absolutely,
with you?
absolutely. You have to have a pretty strong work ethic or ethnic to do this. Yeah, and I worked some with Lee Sklar, the bass player. You know.
Yeah. Once again, for folks that might not be familiar, that is someone you should absolutely look up.
Big furry guy.
Yeah, long beard.
Long beard, long hair, long beard. Played with Phil Collins, you know, toured with him, played on those records, and James Taylor forever, you know, and then everybody else. And if you ever need to remind yourself who he's played on, you can look at his bass because they've all signed it. It's just everywhere, you know. But I remember working with him, and here he is in the session world. He's a star.
Sure.
You know, he's a star. And I just remember seeing how hard he worked and how focused he stayed on a tracking date. And I just remember going, I'm gonna learn from this guy, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Has technology really caused a shift in the way that records are made? I mean, certainly the way that records are consumed.
Right, yeah.
How have you seen that impact you?
We were on tape forever, you know, first analog tape, then digital tape. And
that just takes a lot of time.
it does. And you know, I built a whole category of humor based around rewind time. When I would hear go, I would go, hey, you know, that reminds me of, you know, and now with digital recording, it's like space bar. Oh, we're ready, okay. I didn't have a funny thing to say anyway. So that changed my humor dispensing on sessions. It's a lot faster and a lot more flexible. The thing about tape, though, that I remember is that it was again fear-based in that what you played, there it was. And we used to get a track and go in, and they would literally solo up the kick drum and the bass, and we'd listen.
Yeah.
And punch around that, and sometimes they would rock the tape back and forth and find where the kick is hitting versus something else. You know, it was a strip search. We called it a strip search, and if you made a little mistake and nobody picked up on it, at some point they were going to hear it.
Yeah.
You had to fix it. It wasn't like, oh, we'll just take it from the other verse and just pop it on there.
Yeah.
It had to be
You had to call
right.
yourself out.
So what happened was that when, you know, we're rolling, you know, you're sitting on the edge of your chair because it's a true performance at that point. You can punch in, but it was a pain to punch in and out and everything. And
punching on tape is not at all like punching in digital at all.
Not at all.
You
Not at
know,
all.
where there's no digitally manipulating where it's like, ooh, I didn't get that punch right on the beat, so I'll just slide it over and do a crossfade. It's like, well, now you're going to have to do that entire chorus over.
Yeah, and if you're playing piano
Yeah.
at 15 inches per second, you know, the tape is going slowly, you punch in and there's your punch out has a huge gap. So a lot of times they would have to cut the tape, put in leader, and use that for their punches on keyboards and stuff. So it's a lot faster now. But I mean, so much has changed as far as the way music's distributed, the way you said, and not having physical product to hold and to admire and to collect and look, and there's your collection. You could actually tangibly see it, and people would, like if Madonna came out with a new record, people would line up at a record store at midnight for a midnight release. They would come, they would physically get in their car, they wouldn't Uber, they would drive, and they would stand in line to buy a complete record, an album. It was a sacrifice to go and purchase a piece of music. Yeah, but you felt like you owned it.
Yeah, and that's what, I remember as a kid, whether it's throwing newspapers or mowing lawns, I had to, get my $10 and go and buy that, tape record or then CD later on. And that was a big deal because, hey, it took multiple hours for me to earn that $10.
Yeah, it was
And so then, I consumed everything about that disc, the artwork, everything that was in it, all the names of everyone there, because I had put so much resources into that. And that's one of the things that is a little bit sad for me, for my kids, where they want to listen to something and, we just do, and here it comes out of the speakers. Yeah. There's no sacrifice there in order to be entertained.
Now you can have anything ever recorded on a hard drive and go, yep, it's all there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, it kind of takes away the specialness of it. Yeah. It's like if, I don't know if it'd be like growing up in the mountains and like, yep, there's the mountains, and somebody who doesn't get to see them every time would go, oh my gosh. Yeah. But maybe people still go, oh my gosh, depending on your mountain. Yeah. But it'd be like when you have such easy access to stuff and everything, and it's like it's right there, then it kind of takes away some of the specialness of it. And my biggest, probably the saddest thing that I've seen go away is the album cut and the album cut writer, where I wouldn't buy albums for the single. It would be that deep cut. Yeah. Because an artist, I remember seeing it several times where an artist would find a song. They would either write the song or find a song, and they would say, this is the cut that will kind of determine the rest of the feel of the record. It'll deliver the message I want to deliver, and it'll set the tone musically for everything, and then everything's kind of built around it. And I've seen it where even that first song after the record's put together, that first song sometimes is jettisoned. It doesn't make it on the record. But you're making a statement with these 10, 12 songs, and so not everything has to be a single. So you can have stuff that's just musically amazing that would never make it on radio. Yeah. And that would be the thing that I'd be drawn to. Yeah. And now it's singles and bad singles. Yeah. And that's what we play on now in the session world. It's singles and bad singles. And those album cuts, if it doesn't make it to the radio, they can't even recoup their demo cost. Wow. So the album cut writer, those guys with the deep thoughts and the deep musicality that got me into music in the first place, they're gone. I'm sure they're writing out of the passion of it, but those songs aren't making it to the radio. So that's sad to me, because that's some of the depth that's missing, I think.
And because of some of that shift, production has changed a little bit, and that there's, and some of it's just, musicality has changed throughout the years, but
and it needed to.
Yeah, there's less group activity to make music. Right. Yeah.
There's less brain trust going on, which you get a lot of talented people in the room together. You can come up with some good stuff. Look at NASA. That wasn't one guy. You know.
Doing one thing and then emailing it to someone else and saying, add your add your equation to that and then shoot it back to me.
Anytime I work with someone face to face and they make just the slightest suggestion, in my brain I'm going, I would have never thought to have done that, and that's so much better.
Is that one thing that you think that Nashville still has that some of the other music hubs don't?
Huge. And that's why musicians will move here, is because that brain trust effect where you get all the players in a room together. And, the bass player will say, hey, what if we were to, and somebody else goes, hey, why don't you check out and you get this, it's this fluid thing going on. And a producer can steer everyone, and the players are so good here with each rundown, just from the producer saying a few things, it could hit a different demographic. With each rundown, like, well, this would be more for this age group, or this would be more for people that are into this kind of music.
But when you're emailing tracks back and forth, you're stuck with whatever the first person did.
It's kind of like going back to tape.
Yeah.
Because
in a way,
what you do is what you do.
Yeah. But without having that collaboration of, I have this idea, you have this idea. And if we kind of combine those ideas, maybe it comes up with even a third different new, maybe even better idea.
Right, but here's the upshot of recording by yourself is that, getting back to the fear thing and not wanting to suck in front of your friends, sometimes in the session players will play it safe in order to not make a mistake or not to be making like they're searching or whatever. You want to come up with the goods. There's a performance aspect, with sessions where you want to deliver, it's like you want it to be like magic where they hand you a chart, you listen to the work tape, you go out, bam, and we knocked it out of the park. But when you're on your own, I'll listen to a song a bunch while I'm setting up, and I climb into that song.
Right.
And I'll take too long on it, but I feel that I'm picking up on stuff that I would have missed
and
had I been trying to perform.
Be a little bit more intricate with your parts.
Totally.
Because you might not be able to land it the first 3 or 4 times, but the 5th time you can.
Yeah.
And that's, and after you edit it, then you can render it and rename it Jerry's first take.
Yeah.
And then when you email it out, it's very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So interacting with people, I think for me that's one of the biggest joys that I get out of this job. That not only the camaraderie, but the artistic differences and what that brings. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy when booking a session with players, because it's almost like casting the album, if you will.
Yeah, totally.
I know that I need to get this guy in here because he's going to bring this kind of attitude to the session. I need to make sure I don't hire this guy because he has a political view that he will let everyone know about that is completely contrary to the artist that's going to be coming in. Things like that. So one of my, it's become one of my favorite things to do is to have both you and your son Miles on a session. For a whole lot of different reasons. Yes, musically, because both of you are obviously very gifted at what you do, but it means a lot to me to see you guys work together. What does it mean to you?
It's a blast. In fact, I just, we get called for the same sessions, and there's been times where it took people a while to put together, oh, you guys are related? We would get called for the same session. We just worked together a few days ago.
And real quick, for those that don't know, so Miles is a drummer.
He's a drummer, yeah.
He's more than that, but he plays drums.
Yeah, he's a drummer with big ears. He hears a lot.
Absolutely.
He hears a lot, like to the point where I'm going, oh, I didn't notice that.
Wow,
And and he comes from a rock background, but he won ACM Drummer of the Year, last year. He's a great drummer, great pocket. And he's been that way forever. I had a little home studio when he was growing up as a kid. I remember the first time I fed him click, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
And he was on it like a cheap suit, you know.
Wow.
He just has that natural gift. Because he grew up with me playing on the road with Amy, and like back in the Lead Me On days, it was Greg Morrow on drums, who's a fabulous session player here in town. And he would sit behind Greg, you know, behind the stage, and they would get him headphones on his little head, and he would watch Greg play, and you know, he learned what not to play too.
Yeah.
You know, there's the simplicity at times is the thing that's going to drive everything like a train.
I think that's interesting because Greg is really known for his touch.
Oh yeah.
And it's hilarious because Miles has that too, but he's probably more well known for
bashing.
Yes.
He destroys what he does not understand. Yeah. Talking about having a group of guys in the room, it's really interesting that all it takes is for one player out of 4, 5, 6 players that's maybe not totally on top of their game to make everything feel kind of like out of sorts.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I remember early on doing sessions and, you know, going in the control room to listen back to a take and just telling the drummer, man, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. I can't buy a groove today, you know. And the drummer's like, man, he said, I'm feeling the same thing. And then finally they start soloing stuff up, you know, with the click, and it's just like, oh, it's dude.
Yeah.
And all it takes is for one person, pocket-wise, to kind of be out of sorts, that it kind of wrecks the whole feel.
Yeah.
And because of that, you know, producers do the casting thing where they know that you can deliver and that everything will be totally cool. There are some specialty players that they may bring in after the fact that they know we can punch around, but what he'll bring to the table, no one else can do. And that's another shame of the music industry with budgets and stuff down. With budgets being tighter, you can't take as many chances. So producers will use the same guys on stuff when it'd be nice if they could stir it up and bring in some specialty players, but no one has time. No one has time to deal with somebody not really laying it in or taking time to put a part together.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I kind of miss is some of these guys that wouldn't be like spot on for a tracking date, but they can overdub cool stuff and bring the project out.
Yeah.
Those guys they're out of work.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you been, like when you've been out on the road and you've been able to see the impact that some of the songs that you've worked on, what that means to people?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I did a tour with Tim McGraw and Faith Hill this past fall, and Tim has some songs that are powerful songs. You know, he does it right.
Yeah.
But he's got some there's humble and kind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's just great to see that night after night, you know, because it's
live
a
like
common.
you're dying.
Live like you're dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty inspiring to people.
Yeah,
to
totally.
be kind of a part of that. That's got to be meaningful to you, right?
It is. Yeah, it's not all about truck which we didn't play.
Yeah.
I was happy with that. To see how music can impact people, you know.
Yeah.
You want to hear something really dumb?
No.
All right, this is really dumb. And you're probably going, I bet it's not going to be dumb. And then you'll hear it and you'll go, that's dumb. I was on the road years ago and hopped in a cab. You know, came out of a hotel, hopped in a cab, and this cab driver was enormous. I can't begin to describe how big he was.
Yeah.
He was huge, obese, you know, and I noticed that the car seat was broken back because of his weight, and I was having to kind of move my legs and everything. So we were driving along, and then he pulled over, and he said, I got to go in here real quick. I'm like, well, that's weird, but he shut the meter off for that time. And I'm waiting on him, and I'm kind of looking around, and I kind of lean up, and I can see where his arm was. It made a big dent in there, and the seat everything, where his thumbs are on the string, it was like he was still there.
Wow.
And it was like, that's how I want my guitars to look after I've been there.
Yeah.
And I want to have a presence that even when I'm gone, it's like, oh, you can still see him there, you know? And I know that's dumb as far as a huge taxi driver, but it's like, I want to have an impact like that, you know?
In parting, you know, what is your hope for Nashville beyond traffic issues?
Yeah, man. You know, when you see a city growing the way it is and you feel like it's just all profit-driven right now, you know, it's like the carpetbagger effect. Like after the Civil War, people moving in and cashing in on this new growth and everything. I just hope the people downtown keep their heads about them, and as far as zoning-wise, it's getting crazy around here.
Yeah.
But more so just because of the music industry here, I'm hoping that we can get things monetized in a better way where songwriters don't take such a hit.
Yeah.
It's, you know, they were used to writing hits and now they're taking a hit. There's got to be that brass ring, that reason why you can go in and write every day.
Yeah.
And they're not being paid fairly right now. And it affects everyone. So I'm hoping that we catch up in that regards. And I'm hoping that we catch up for players too, as far as getting a better system for royalties and stuff. The union's doing a really good job, but you know, people are saying no to unions on things, and you know, it's basically you're putting out a product for free at that point. You know, so I'm hoping we can get a better way to monetize some of this stuff, where people can stay in the occupation, you know, and not have to take on another job or whatever.
Right.
So.
Great. Jerry, thanks so much, brother.
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming by.
You had to get the first one out of the way.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being so kind and gracious.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks for having me over.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you, sir.
All right.